I still remember the exact moment my phone rang. It was 6:47 in the morning. A Tuesday. I remember because I'd just made coffee, cheap grocery store brand because money was tight, and the steam was curling up off the mug when my screen lit up with a number I didn't recognize. "Is this Louis Murphy?" a woman asked, her voice professional, clipped. "Yeah, that's me. Mr. Murphy, I'm calling from Atlanta General Hospital. Your grandmother, Dorothy Mae Murphy, passed away quietly at 5:23 this morning. I'm deeply sorry for your loss." I sat down hard on the kitchen floor. Not a chair. The floor. Because Grandma Dorothy wasn't just my grandmother. She was the only person in my entire life who never wanted anything from me. No angle. No agenda. Just love, loud, southern, and unconditional. I was 32 years old and I cried like I was 7 again, sitting on her porch in Decatur eating butter cookies while she braided my sister's hair. My wife, Serena, appeared in the doorway, arms folded, watching me. "Who died?" she asked. Not, "Baby, what happened?" Not, "Louis, you okay?" Just, "Who died?" Looking back, that question tells you everything about Serena Patrice Murphy that you'll ever need to know. "Grandma Dorothy," I managed. She nodded slowly. And then, I swear on everything, her eyes shifted. Not to me. To her phone. Like she was already calculating something. I was too broken to catch it then. But I'd catch it soon enough. And Lord, when I did. Let me tell you about Dorothy Mae Murphy, because the world got her completely wrong. She lived in a modest brick house on Ashford Lane in Decatur, Georgia, the same house since 1974. Drove a 2009 Camry with a cracked dashboard. Wore house slippers to the mailbox. Clipped coupons every Sunday like it was church. The whole family thought she was broke. My Uncle Calvin used to joke about it at Thanksgiving. Dorothy probably got $200 in a mason jar buried in the backyard. Everyone laughed. Grandma just smiled and passed the cornbread. But I knew something they didn't. When I was 19 and completely lost, dropped out of Georgia State, sleeping on a cousin's couch, Grandma Dorothy called me over one afternoon. She sat me across from her at her kitchen table, folded her hands, and said, "Louis, I need you to understand something. What people see and what's real are two completely different things. Don't ever confuse the two." She paid my tuition that semester. Cash. Enrolled me herself. When I asked where the money came from, she just said, "I've been building something since before your daddy was born. Mind your studies." I never asked again. I just worked hard because she believed in me when nobody else did. That was the thing about Dorothy Murphy. She chose people deliberately. Every birthday card she sent me had a handwritten note inside. Every call lasted at least an hour. She had one rule: show up. My brother Darius never showed up. Darius was the golden child, handsome, charming, connected. He built a real estate empire in his 30s and made sure everyone knew it. Designer suits. Buckhead penthouse. Last time he visited Grandma was her 75th birthday. That was 4 years ago. I visited her every other Sunday. I never thought that would matter so much. The funeral was held at Greater Ebenezer Baptist on a Friday. Church was packed. Dorothy Murphy touched more lives than any of us ever realized. Women from her old neighborhood. Former students she'd tutored for free. A man named Patrick who said she'd loaned him money in 1989 and he'd never forgotten it. But my family came in loud. Uncle Calvin was already talking about the house before we even reached the burial site. His wife, Aunt Shirley, kept whispering to my cousin Laura about what Dorothy must have left behind. Darius pulled up in his black Range Rover 15 minutes late, wearing a charcoal Tom Ford suit. He shook a few hands, kissed a few cheeks, played the grieving grandson with Hollywood precision. He hadn't called Grandma in months. I knew because she'd mentioned it, quietly, without bitterness, one Sunday while we watched Jeopardy together. "Darius is busy," she'd said, stirring her tea. "He's not that busy, Grandma." She just smiled. "People show you who they are, baby. You just have to be paying attention." I stood at her casket and made her a silent promise. I'll always pay attention, Grandma. What I didn't expect was what I noticed at the reception afterward. Serena and Darius were standing too close together in the corner of the fellowship hall. Not scandalously close, but familiar close. Comfortable close. Like they'd had their own private conversations before. I told myself I was paranoid. My grandmother just died. I was raw and reading into things. But Serena had been distant for months, cold in our bed, secretive with her phone, quick to criticize everything I did or didn't do. I'd been blaming stress. Standing there eating pound cake while watching my wife whisper something to my brother that made him grin. I started blaming something else entirely. 3 days after the funeral, I went back to Grandma's house alone. I needed to feel close to her. I needed her kitchen smell, cornbread and pine sol and something floral I never identified. I needed to sit in her floral armchair and hear the silence that somehow still felt like her voice. I sat there for an hour before I noticed the envelope on her kitchen table. It had my name on it. Louis. Written in her handwriting, that elegant old-school cursive she'd learned in segregated classrooms where teachers demanded excellence because the world demanded reasons to dismiss them. My hands shook opening it. Baby. I know you're hurting right now and I'm sorry I couldn't stay longer. But you were always my greatest joy, not because you were perfect, but because you were present. Don't let grief make you small. What I've built, I built for someone worthy of it. My attorney, Raymond Palmer, will be in touch. His number is below. Everything will make sense soon. Watch who runs when the money appears. I love you to the marrow. Grandma D. I read it 4 times. Watch who runs when the money appears. I didn't understand it yet. But something cold moved through my chest. I called Serena to tell her what I'd found. She didn't answer. Called again. Voicemail. I texted, "Hey, you okay?" Found a letter from Grandma. Kind of shaken up. She read it. I saw the read receipt timestamp. She didn't respond for 6 hours. When she finally texted back, all it said was, "Sorry babe, been busy. We'll talk later." We didn't talk later. Because when I got home that night, Serena wasn't there. Her side of the closet was exactly as full as it always was. But something felt subtracted from the house. Like the warmth had a leak I couldn't locate. I sat on our bed in the dark and held that letter. Watch who runs when the money appears. Grandma always knew. She always knew. 10 days after the funeral, I found it. I wasn't snooping. I want to be clear about that because people always ask. I wasn't going through Serena's phone out of jealousy or insecurity. She'd asked me to read a recipe off her phone while she showered. Her messages were open when I picked it up, and the most recent thread was right there, not hidden, not locked. The name at the top said D. And I made the mistake of looking. D, you need to stop being so obvious. Louis isn't stupid. Serena, Louis is exactly as stupid as we need him to be right now. Did you find out about the will? D. Raymond Palmer's office still won't release details. But it's coming soon. Serena, whatever she left, we need to be positioned. If Louis gets anything significant. D. Don't worry. I'll handle Louis. Serena, I love how your mind works. D. I love other things about you. The shower was still running. I stood in my own kitchen holding my wife's phone, reading a conversation between her and my brother that made my entire marriage feel like a crime scene. I didn't scream. Didn't throw anything. I did something worse. I got very, very quiet. I set the phone back down exactly where I found it. I went to the bedroom. Changed clothes. Walked out the front door. I drove to a parking lot on Cascade Road and sat there for 2 hours. Every memory of Serena ran through my head like evidence. The coldness starting 8 months ago, the private phone calls, the way she'd looked at Darius at Grandma's funeral with something other than politeness. My grandmother wrote watch who runs when the money appears. Serena wasn't running from money. She was running toward it. And she was using my brother to get there. Raymond Palmer's office was on Peachtree Street, 14th floor, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Midtown Atlanta. He was a tall, precise Igbo man in his late 60s, silver-templed, measured in every movement. He'd been Grandma Dorothy's attorney for 31 years. He greeted me with both hands and a look in his eyes that told me he already knew everything. The will reading was scheduled for the following Thursday. The whole family had been summoned, Uncle Calvin, Aunt Shirley, their kids, Darius, and me. But Raymond asked me to come early. Alone. Your grandmother was very specific about certain instructions, he said, folding his hands on his mahogany desk. She wanted you to be prepared before the room filled up. Prepared for what, exactly? He studied me for a moment. Dorothy Mae Murphy was not the woman most people believed her to be, Louis. She was, in fact, the founder and silent majority shareholder of Murphy & Associates Strategic Holdings, a private equity and property management company headquartered here in Atlanta, with satellite offices in Charlotte and Houston. I blinked. She owned a company. She built it. Quietly. Starting in 1979 with a $3,000 loan and land deeds she'd been accumulating since the late 60s. She deliberately kept her lifestyle modest. She didn't want attention. She didn't want people around her because of money. He paused. She wanted people around her because of love. My throat tightened. What's the company worth? I asked. Raymond opened a folder. Slid it across the desk. I looked at the number. $212 million. I heard a ringing in my ears. She left it to me. I whispered. Raymond nodded. All of it. With detailed operational guidance, a transition team already in place, and a personal letter sealed for the reading. I thought about Serena. About Dee. Does anyone else know? Raymond smiled slowly. Not yet. I didn't confront Serena. I know what you're thinking, Louis, why didn't you say something? Because confrontation without confirmation is just noise. Grandma taught me that. Don't move until you're ready to move completely. So I watched. And Lord, what I watched. The morning of the will reading, Serena spent 45 minutes getting dressed. Full makeup. Her burgundy wrap dress, the one she wore to impress people. Heels she usually saved for galas. You're dressed up, I said from the doorway. It's a formal occasion, she said without turning around. It's a will reading, Serena. In an attorney's office. She glanced at me in the mirror. Your grandmother apparently had assets. I want to be respectful. Respectful. That word burned. Darius arrived at Raymond's building at the same time as us and somehow managed to be surprised to see Serena. A performance so smooth you'd have missed it if you weren't watching his hands, which found the small of her back for exactly 1 second before he caught himself. I caught it. Uncle Calvin and Aunt Shirley were already inside with their adult children, my cousins Laura and Stephen, both of them dressed like they were auditioning for a lottery commercial. We all sat around the conference table. Raymond entered precisely at 10 o'clock. Thank you all for coming, he said. Dorothy Mae Murphy prepared this document 18 months ago, updated it 6 months ago, and asked that I read it without interruption. Aunt Shirley leaned toward Uncle Calvin and I heard her whisper, the house alone in that neighborhood is worth at least $400,000. Darius sat with perfect posture, hands clasped, face arranged into appropriate grief. Serena sat beside me, reached for my hand. I let her hold it. For the last time. Raymond Palmer cleared his throat and opened the folder. I'll begin with Dorothy's personal statement, as she requested. He read in a steady, even voice. To my family, I love you all, even those of you I loved from a careful distance. I spent my life building something because I believed in legacy. Not the kind you inherit. The kind you earn. I watched each of you. Not with judgment. With education. Some of you called. Some of you visited. Some of you prayed for me. Some of you only prayed for what I'd leave behind. The difference matters more than you know. The room was perfectly silent. To my nephew Calvin and his wife Shirley, I leave $50,000 each, to be used as you see fit. I hope you find something worth building. To my grandchildren Laura and Stephen, $25,000 each for education or a legitimate business start. To my grandson Darius Ellington Murphy. Darius straightened. I watched him breathe differently. Raymond paused. I leave a handwritten note. Silence. Raymond lifted a sealed envelope from the folder and slid it down the table to Darius. Nobody breathed. Darius stared at the envelope, opened it with careful fingers. I watched his face as he read it. He went completely still. What does it say? Aunt Shirley asked. Darius said nothing. He folded it and put it in his jacket pocket. But Laura, sitting beside him, had already seen it. She looked across the table at me with wide eyes. Raymond continued reading. To my grandson Louis Murphy, the one who showed up, who listened, who loved me without condition or calculation, I leave the entirety of Murphy and Associates Strategic Holdings, all associated accounts, properties, and assets, valued at current market at $212 million, effective immediately upon execution of this document. Serena's hand went ice cold in mine. The room exploded. Uncle Calvin shot to his feet. 200 million. Aunt Shirley burst into tears, the wrong kind, loud and theatrical, like someone who'd just lost something she'd never actually had. Darius sat perfectly still, which was somehow the loudest thing in the room. Serena had withdrawn her hand. I felt it go before I heard anything else. Just gone. Like a switch. Raymond raised one hand and the room quieted out of sheer professional authority. Dorothy was extraordinarily clear, he said. Louis is the sole beneficiary of Murphy and Associates. This is not contestable. The trust structure was established years ago specifically to prevent litigation. Any challenges will be dismissed. He looked at Calvin. Calvin sat down. Darius finally stood up, smoothed his jacket, and said quietly, "Congratulations, Louis." Then he walked out. Serena watched him leave. And for just one moment, one devastating, clarifying, unforgettable moment, she watched the door close behind him with an expression I can only describe as calculation. Then she turned to me. And she smiled. "Baby," she said softly, reaching for my arm. "This is incredible. We're going to do amazing things with this." 3 days ago she was texting my brother about positioning. Now suddenly it was we. After the others filed out, still buzzing and grieving and calculating, Laura caught my arm near the elevator. "Louis," she whispered. "The note Grandma left Darius, I saw it before he closed it." "What did it say?" Laura's eyes filled. She pulled out her phone and showed me a photo she'd taken before anyone noticed. 4 words. 4 words in Dorothy Mae Murphy's elegant cursive. "You never called. Grandma. I had to hold the wall. You never called." She waited her whole life for him to call. And he never did. And she never said a word about it. She just wrote it down and left it for him to carry forever. I told Serena we needed to talk that night. She knew. You can always tell when someone knows. They get gracious right before the guillotine drops. She cooked dinner. Actually cooked, which she hadn't done in months. Set the table. Lit a candle. I sat across from her and watched the performance. "I saw your messages," I said quietly. "The ones with Darius." The candle flickered. She didn't deny it. That told me everything. "Louis." "I'm not going to yell," I said. "I'm not going to threaten. I just need you to tell me the truth, one time, because you owe me that at minimum." She folded her napkin in her lap. A long silence. "I was scared," she finally said. "We've been struggling. I didn't know if you had any real future and Darius." "Don't," I said. "Was already established and I made a mistake." "Serena." My voice was completely flat. "You texted him, 'I love how your mind works.' That's not a mistake. That's a choice. Multiple choices. Over months." She looked at me across the candlelight and I could see her recalibrating. Watching the numbers. Deciding which version of this conversation benefited her most. It was like watching someone I loved become a stranger in real time. "What happens now?" she asked. "I've spoken with my attorney," I said. "Divorce papers will be filed Friday. The house is in my name. I'll give you 60 days. Louis, the company, we could build something together. Serena. I stood up. Grandma left me $212 million because I showed up. Because I loved without calculating. I'm not about to invite calculation into the boardroom. I pushed my chair in carefully. Enjoy dinner. I walked upstairs. She sat alone at that table she'd set for two. My brother called me 2 weeks after the reading. I almost didn't answer. But something told me I needed to hear whatever he had to say, not for forgiveness, but for closure. Louis. His voice was rougher than usual. Something scraped clean out of it. Darius. A long pause. I'm not calling about the money, he said. I want you to know that. Okay. I've been sitting with that note for 2 weeks. Another pause. 4 words. Louis. I drove by her house last month. You know. Didn't stop. Told myself I'd come back. Told myself there was time. My chest ached for him and for her simultaneously. There was always time, I said. You just kept choosing not to use it. I know. His voice broke on that, barely, but it broke. She deserved better from me. She knew you loved her, I said. Because it was true and he needed to hear it. She just needed you to pick up the phone. And I didn't. No. Another silence. Then, you gonna be good? With the company, all of it. I'm going to honor what she built. I know you will. He sounded like a man sitting in the wreckage of something he'd built himself. That's why she gave it to you. We stayed on the phone in silence for almost a full minute before he said, Take care of yourself, little brother. You too, Darius. I hung up. I didn't forgive him that day. But I stopped hating him. Hate is weight, and I had a company to carry. What Serena did to us was calculated and cold, and that I carried differently, like a scar you stop pressing. 6 weeks after the reading, I walked into Murphy & Associates Strategic Holdings for the first time as its owner. The transition team Grandma had assembled was extraordinary. 8 professionals, ranging from a CFO named Vivienne Parks, a sharp woman from Birmingham with 15 years in private equity, to an operations director named Theodore Teddy Adisa who'd been with the company 11 years and had known Grandma personally. Teddy met me at the door and shook my hand with both of his. She talked about you constantly, he said. Called you her real investment. I had to swallow hard to keep it together. The office walls were lined with framed photos, Dorothy at ribbon cuttings, Dorothy with community organizations, Dorothy in front of properties she'd turned from vacant lots into affordable housing developments. She'd quietly been building a legacy while everyone underestimated her. I looked at a photo of her from 1989, 30 years younger, standing in front of the company's first office on Auburn Avenue with a wide, knowing smile. What people see and what's real are 2 completely different things. I understood now. Finally. Completely. I spent that first week learning every file. Every deal. Every partnership. Vivienne showed me the books. Profitable, conservative, brilliantly structured. Grandma hadn't just built a company. She'd built a fortress designed to survive past her. My first decision as CEO was to establish the Dorothy M. Murphy Foundation, a scholarship program for first-generation college students in Decatur. Teddy put together a press release. By the end of the month, we had 40 applications. Serena saw the news coverage. She texted me, "Proud of you." I read it, put the phone down, and went back to work. It's been 8 months now. The divorce finalized on a Tuesday, same day of the week she died, which felt like the universe underlining something. I stood outside the courthouse on Washington Street and looked up at the Atlanta skyline and breathed in a way I hadn't breathed in years. Clean. Clear. Mine. Darius moved to Charlotte. We're not close, but we're not broken forever either. He called on my birthday. We talked for 20 minutes. That's something. Uncle Calvin sent a card congratulating me on the company. I sent him back a polite thank you and meant it. The company is growing. Vivienne and Teddy have become people I genuinely trust, which is a gift I don't take lightly. And every Sunday morning, without fail, I drive to Decatur. I park on Ashford Lane. I walk up to that modest brick house, which I've preserved exactly as she left it, because some places shouldn't be changed. I sit in her floral armchair. I drink coffee. I talk to her. I tell her about the deals. About the foundation kids. About the property in Houston we just acquired. About the woman I've started seeing. Her name is Camille, she teaches 3rd grade, she makes me laugh without trying. I tell Grandma I'm okay. More than okay. I think about that letter she left me. Watch who runs when the money appears. She saw Serena before I did. She saw Darius before he saw himself. She watched everyone clearly because she loved without needing anything back. That's the inheritance that matters most. Not the $212 million. The way she loved. The way she showed up. If you believe people who show up deserve to be seen, hit subscribe. Only people who think love should come with conditions won't. Comment Dorothy knew if this story hit you somewhere real. Because she did. She always did.